Okay. We're doing this for the Legacy Project for Atenveldt,
Right.
and trying to get the...
Dinosaur.
Yes, for lack of a better term. Claire seems to be very fond of that term. And so for the people who don't know, could you state your name and then your name and title in the SCA?
Okay. My name is Sandra McDaniel. In the Society, I am Alianora da Lyshare. I'm a Baroness, a Band Thane, Companion of the Order of the Laurel, and the Dowager Countess Good.
That is quite a list of titles.
It's been a long time.
Tell me about the Dowager Countess. It's the first time I've heard that term.
My husband, Count Joseph the Good, passed away 4 years ago. Therefore, I became his Dowager Countess, because I'm not a countess in my own right, but by courtesy, which is something we do in this kingdom. A former sovereign can confer on his or her real-world spouse the rank, precedence, and title.
Okay.
So.
What was your first event or introduction to the SCA?
Well, my first introduction was when the local Sunday supplement magazine ran a cover story about the very young barony of Atenveldt here. Actually, I think that was before it was even a barony. And on the cover were Mike Cady and several other people. I think Mike Reynolds. I'm not certain, but Rick Cook might have been one of those people. There were hardly any girls, almost none. And those who were in the group were married or, tightly bound to someone. So anyway, I was a senior in high school, and my best friends and I, later to be known as the Zagnuts.
Okay.
We were called.
The word for your household has gotten in a previous interview.
Yes, Zagamar. And it was Dina and her best friend Jackie, who lived next door to my best friend Linda. Now they are Duchess Lorelei, Duchess Cora, and Lady Sugar. So we were the Zagnuts before. But at our first event in October, it was October 10th, 1970, we made quite a splash because, like I said, there weren't any girls. And all but one of us met our husbands that day, our future husbands. But we went to a tournament after seeing this article in the paper. One of the older sister of one of us went to an event where she met her husband, by the way, at that event, to check it out on behalf of our parents. She decided it was okay, so we all went to the next event, which was the third coronet tournament for the Principality of Atenveldt. We went from barony to principality almost overnight. And so that was the final principality tournament. Robert Round Pounder won that one.
So in that tournament was also the first coronation you attended was after that?
Was the first Kingdom Crown list was that following January.
Wow,
yes.
That was really fast.
That was the one Rick won.
Yep.
They wanted to get us off our hands very quickly. The West was tired of us. We complained and moaned and griped. But there was a play written by my husband and Robert Roundpowder called The Fat Prince of Atenveldt that I have a copy of somewhere if I can find it.
Oh, we need to scan that.
Okay, it's funny. They had a good time. They got drunk and wrote this overnight. And Prince Robert played himself, for instance. It was fun. And the Zagnuts were a Greek chorus who sang, like there's the Michael of Moria refrain, "O serpent in the garden, O nightshade in the grass, you bring a tremor to our souls, and a pain unto our... a tremor to our hearts and a pain unto our soul." Sorry, I can never tell a joke properly.
That's fine.
But, yeah, they had fun writing it. It was a lot of fun to do. The Arthur of Lochhaven character was played by Solomon the Enchanter, who's about 5 feet tall. And he came out doing a really hot, falsetto voice saying, "My parade, my parade, my parade." It was really cute. Anyway, that was our first revel, by the way, when that was performed. But we had so much fun. We were teenage girls in fairyland with all these handsome princes ready to take us away, whisk us away on their white steeds. Of course, none of them could even afford hardly a car. Actually, Joseph had a white 51 DeSoto, but it hardly ever ran, so I don't think it counted.
It was a lame steed.
Yeah, very lame steed. He was a student at the time, of course, at ASU. I met him at that first tournament. He jeté. He was dancing ballet at the time, occasionally professionally. And he jetéed over a table, and genuflected and kissed my hand. Talk about an opening line.
True.
And we were married for 35 years, so pretty happily we have 2 kids.
That's nice. I have no words to kind of follow that one up. That's great. So, but you and Rick Cook and even Duke Heinrich, in many ways, got to see awards created.
Oh yeah, we did.
As opposed to, like when I interviewed Patty, to a degree, Atenveldt had been established by the time Patty had gotten her award of arms.
It made a huge, things moved so fast. They really did.
Tell me about what you remember. Did you ever get an award of arms? Or?
Yes, I did.
And was it like shortly after they created it, or did it happen like years later?
However, I was the first court baron created in Atenveldt.
Nice.
Because my boyfriend was the king. See, Joseph and I would get together and then we'd break up, and get together and we'd break up. After 6.5 years, we figured we were probably ready, so we got married. But we got it all out of the way.
We got the trial done. We're good.
But he won his tournament while we were broken up. We got together again very shortly thereafter. But that's how the court barony came to be seen as the King's Mistress Award for a while. And so I received the Award of Arms at the same time as the court barony.
That's awesome.
But I got a boatload of others too. But he didn't do anything.
Well, obviously the first tourney was that one you mentioned afterwards, or the first crown tourney, excuse me. Did you ever autocrat an event?
Oh, many.
Tell me about one that was memorable to you.
Let's see. There was one autocrated a Kingdom Day, which was Kingdom Anniversary Day revel at the church on 3rd Avenue. It's now the Arizona Puppet Theater.
Okay. But
the Kingdom and Barony used it for years and years. It was sort of baronial headquarters when I was Baroness of Atenveldt. And it was a really, really nice venue for us because it was a Romanesque building. It was the first Mormon church here in the valley. It was falling apart. We did tons of work on that building just to keep it standing. We put a roof on it for us, or at least extensive repairs and a partial replacement. That was just free labor that our people did, and we painted it, and we did all kinds of stuff. And it was a really great venue, and so we really enjoyed doing that. And it was a great celebration for us. It was all of 10 years after, I think. But that's a very memorable one. I've also autocrated a stray award. Been on the executive committee for several years. I was main autocrat a couple times. And that was kind of cool because I had been away from the society for a number of years at that point. And it allowed me to get to know people again really fast and get immersed into the mainstream team activity.
How would you equate your experience to, say, your first Australia Award to the first award you autocrated?
A world of difference.
Tell me about the beginning where you show up and you're not running the event, but you get to see the madness that is Australia War.
It's somewhat magical. It's fun. You get to see people from all over the world that you haven't seen in a long time, especially the people we know best, which is, actually we know people from King of the West, the Bay Area, for the most part better than Southern California because we have that history going. Besides, Qaid is what kept us from our manifest destiny. Arne and Steve used to talk about that all the time. We need to get Qaid so that we can have, and Joseph was king. I remember going, no more. because he'd get phone calls from New Orleans and Miami and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho at 2 in the morning when he was king. So, yeah. But, yes. And weird things, like somebody wanted him to banish somebody else because somebody else was sleeping with so-and-so's apprentices. Yeah.
You know, like, that joking story, they tell it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in the SCA for 26 years, no, 28 now. And I remember, oh yeah.
Here?
Yes. Well, Jonathan White Wolf was the Baron of Atenveldt at the time.
He was right after us.
And that's when he was my first Baron.
Ah, okay.
And I initially had shown up at the park on 59th and Bethany Home.
Yes.
Where they had the plane in there because my grandmother knew another grandma that had a grandson who was in the SCA.
Ah.
So the notion of like, oh, your son likes swords, I could have introduced him to my grandson.
Right.
So yeah, we'll do that. And then being woken at midnight because someone's going to borrow my heater, and my grandmother wakes me up going, Brian, there's a man out front with a sword who'd like to talk to you.
Yes, that's a typical experience that you get. And when you're my children went to Catholic schools. And actually, oddly enough, the same school that Ivan de Grey and Kathleen's son went to. And Kathleen was Joseph's queen, by the way.
Okay.
So, you know, it's a very interwoven, some say incestuous group. But
And that's royalty.
Yes, indeed it does. So, yeah, there's Kathleen and Ivan's son and my daughter went to the same school. They were in the same classroom. That was a wake-up call when he showed up. Wow. Anyway, she had friends who would come over, and there would be an umbrella stand full of swords. And you just don't think about it. Doesn't everyone have an umbrella stand full of swords?
Decor for the house. I don't understand what your problem is.
Of course, then we have...
You never know when an argument over chips is going to break out.
Absolutely. And we have comic book posters tastefully framed in the family room, that sort of thing. But, your parents are nerds, they're nerds. They better get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that happens to you. Joseph had somebody run into him on Central Avenue when he was with a client, say, "Oh, yeah, Joseph, how are you? I go, suck up. And he's going, so luckily the client thought it was funny. But that's why I always say, look, if you see somebody outside of the group, just use real names, my gosh, yeah.
There's a meme that was floating around, it's floated around for decades by now, on Facebook of, you're in the SCA when you get a call about your squire sleeping with your wife at 2 in the morning. And I have to think that this story has to be one of those items that has sparked that meme.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the sort of thing. We got calls from people wanting us to pay their rent. This is the local baron, okay?
Wow.
The barony of Atenveldt. Yeah, we were in for like 3 years before John. And pay our rent, let's see what else. Intervene in neighbor disputes. It was just bizarre what people expected. I'm not your mother. I'm not your banker. This isn't the real world. That's hard to get through to people sometimes. One of the things I've done over the years is teach, and I try to explain the etiquette to people in one of my classes. It's SCA 101. It was the very first one, and I've even trademarked the name. I also teach a class on SCA myths, because everybody makes up their own rules. I'm sorry, they don't work that way. So, yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten through maybe the first 4 questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we touched on don't worry about it. We've touched on some of the other ones, but I'm going to kind of go through some of them. I skipped out of order a little bit with one of them because you brought up a lovely item that was too easy to not pass up. Obviously, you held a lot of officer positions.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your first one.
Oh, gosh. What was my first one? I believe I was Deputy Mistress of Arts for the municipality.
Of the Sun or Atenveldt?
Of Atenveldt.
Okay.
When I think, I think more of Atenveldt, which only lasted a year or less. Then, yeah.
Most people forget that there was a Principality of Atenveldt,
Yes,
honestly,
they
at some
do.
point.
But that loomed larger in my experience than the Principality of the Sun.
Tell me something memorable about that time.
At that time.
Brief though it was.
As Mistress of Arts?
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot about sewing. I could barely sew. My friend Linda, Lady Siobhan McClonic, taught me how to use the sewing. Well, I knew how to use the sewing machine, but taught me how to follow a pattern and piece together. But I learned a lot more about costume and historical accuracy at that point. Although the ability to research was very limited then. I am so grateful for what is available now. I don't think modern day members appreciate it quite as much as they should have.
I still remember the time when you would have to go to a library.
Well, even then, the information there was usually not as accurate as you would wish.
Yeah.
I was a librarian for a very long time, and I understand research pretty well, and if the information isn't there, there's nothing you can do. It wasn't until women became involved in archaeology and historical research and saw the importance of textiles and clothing and homely objects in the history that we look at and what an important part of life they were and how they could even impact history.
That's interesting. Tell me about the first baronial investiture you went to. Or if not the first, one that was very memorable to you.
First baronial investiture. Well, when I joined, there was already a baron. That was Michael of Moria. He did not have an investiture per se. Baronies were done very differently then because no one had ever done it before. Moria was the first landed baron in the SCA. This was the first barony. The second baron...
And for the viewers that are watching, the barony she's referring to is the barony of Atenveldt.
I'm sorry, barony of Atenveldt. To me, there's only one.
Right there with you.
Go Atenveldt. The second one, I was not present for Ivan de Grey's investiture. What would be the...
Iskathir, I believe? Or...
Yes, it was Iskathir. Woodford and Mariah, who was the older sister who went to the event for us. And ended up marrying Woodford Woodford was Moria's squire, so let's start over. Woodford of Lorien, when it became founding baron and baroness of Iskathir. That was the first one I was at. And then there was Bartholomew of Wolftwain. His was wonderful. And then
Why?
there was ours. Because we were so proud of him. When I joined, he was 12 years old.
Oh.
Yeah, of course, I was so ancient, I was 17. But I remember actually Phoenix Firebird Festival of the Arts, coming to see people in my work uniform. I was a part-time uniform security at the Broadway, and my friend Linda was part-time housekeeping at the Valley Ho. And so we came in our work clothes, and there was Carrie. And I met him briefly, but, that sort of thing. And he had a little bitty scale model of a trebuchet. And he was telling us about it, and we were going, why do you people do these things? Do they even allow anarchists here? What's going on? The usual stuff, just to tease the kid. It wasn't until we were at a party 20 years later, and I believe Linda was telling the story, and he said, that was you? So, Carrie's a hoot. Anyway, he was so cute. He was so upset. Poor little guy. But, what were we talking about? See, when you get old people, we just go, ugh. Anyway.
So tell me about your investiture as a baron and baroness when you took over Atenveldt.
Things were still very, very simple. Our investiture was at Paradise Valley Park, and the place that is now part of PV College. And no, or is it the high school? It's something else now.
Up yonder.
And it was very simple but very nice. Our close friends were there. There were a lot of people there wishing us well. We had fun with Carrie and Missy. We gave them a pardon for anything they might have done while they were barons. And It was simple and it was joyous, and very well done, I have to say. The the heralding was lovely, the marshalling was beautifully done, etc., etc. It's a great memory for me.
And tell me about a coronation you attended that was memorable either because of the people that were being crowned king and queen, or something about the event, maybe it was an ambiance issue. Or...
Well, there were a lot of them. The first coronation took place right after the tournament. So that's how it was done then. And then I believe the same thing happened with Arthur and his first queen. Who was the third? Stephen, same deal. Fourth, Joseph, I did not go to his coronation. No, I was there. Never mind. That was the first one that I recall that was done at a hall.
Okay.
And it was very nicely done. We had dancing, and that's when I received my court barony. And I had a wonderful time. So that's all I can say about that. Another one that was very memorable was Mike and Nina's, Lorelei and Arthur, because that took place at El Dorado Park.
Okay, I remember that.
And they just got married the night before. And
I remember the park, not necessarily the event.
Okay.
Let me be more specific.
But yeah, they just got married the night before, so it was a big day for Zagamar. And then another one was when Sakura, one of the other Zagnats, she had her coronations. They were both beautifully, beautifully staged.
Nice.
And costume, she has excellent taste. And her husband is Robert Roundpounder. You might have heard other people maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
How did you choose your heraldry? And then for everyone that doesn't know, what is
Okay,
your
my heraldry is sable 3 narcissi, affronti proper, Slipton leaf proper. They are narcissus flowers with the stems and leaves. That's a white blossom, 6 petals with a golden center on a black field. The flowers were chosen because the narcissus in Norse cultures is a symbol of resurrection.
Nice.
And of hope, because it's the first flower that pokes up in northern climes, and we have Viking persona in northern climes that pops up before crocus and other flowers. And so that's why I chose that flower, not because I'm particularly narcissistic. And the arrangement was just because I thought they looked pretty.
That's really all that matters.
Yeah, well, actually, originally they were registered as two and one, but that was IOSA. For some reason, wires got crossed. So I had that changed about 10 years later.
You've probably been to a lot of demos.
Oh, God.
Tell me about one that stuck out.
Lordy. It's hard to say. There's so many. The ones that I remember the most are the ones where somebody's an idiot and something goes wrong.
I remember the story. It ended up in the paper. And it was Rick that was telling it to me that he and Mike got into a tussle at one of the tournaments at a park because they were going over what later became known as Eric the Red Tape, or
Eric the Red.
But they crashed into the buffet table.
Oh, yes. Yes. I wasn't there, but I've heard the story.
And so he said, yeah, it was the one that went horribly. He said, we made buffoons of ourselves on the TV.
And on the buffet table.
Yes.
Yes.
So tell me about something where it went horribly south.
Well, actually, with newer members, gags are period, but somehow newer members are so enthusiastic, and I remember it myself. I get so excited about it, you just can't stop talking. But so often what they're saying is just dead wrong. And often it's things that could get us in trouble, you know. There was one woman who was going on and on about the medieval religion of Wicca. Honey, Wicca did not even exist back then. It's a 19th century construct. But it's also not it's not medieval, and we don't do religion. So that sort of thing. And you know how easily people are offended. So you got to be careful about that. We get misunderstood so much.
Yeah.
So, and I think liability. I'm a legal librarian, and my husband was an attorney. So, yeah.
Clearly have some area there.
Yeah.
Out of all the Australia Awards you went to, which was your favorite and why?
It was Australia 21. It was my favorite because first time I was a war autocrat, and I was exhausted and frustrated and irritated and utterly happy the entire time. I mean, everything that could go wrong did go wrong, which is, the way it always happens.
Sure.
But we got through it, and part of it is that the people who attend are so wonderful, and our people are so helpful. They help each other out, and we have so many volunteers, and it's just great.
So whether it was food or ambiance or company, tell me about a feast that you found really enjoyable.
To be perfectly honest, the feasts I enjoyed the most were the early era feasts where we didn't have a served feast, where we would sort of potluck it. And we had court during feast, which is very, very period. And, I was younger, I was more enthusiastic about everything, but there was more magic for me then, more what they now call stardust, than there will ever be again. Although I do enjoy them still to this day. My own apprentice is a wonderful cook, and she plans feasts and does the whole business, and it's wonderful. It's a joy to behold.
You mentioned apprentice, so that implies that at some point someone gave you the Order of the Laurel.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I was given the laurel for my embroidery. I do opus anglicanum, that's schoolwork embroidery.
Okay.
And other forms as well. I did most of the embroidery on the current Kingdom banners. I don't know if you've seen the gold work.
I have gotten an up-close view of them. The best I'm good at is hook and cross stitch, slip stitch.
Oh, okay, slip stitch is good. Yeah, it's fine.
Basic.
Or chain stitch it's called.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the proper terms. It's just when I was doing leatherwork for a long time, I would stitch my leatherwork.
Yeah.
I never knew the things. Just this worked and the leather didn't pull apart, and I was good.
Right.
And then later, Andrea, my wife, got to try out embroidery. She was trying to show it to me. She had a hard time, and I'm like, "You mean this?" And she's like, "You're kidding? How did you know?" I'm like,
You've done the stitch a million times.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Anyway, that's what I received it for. I didn't have an apprentice until about 6 years ago. What I had was Alianora's Home for Wayward Artisans. I used to say I didn't have apprentices, but I take in strays. Now, most of them are peers now, I'm proud to say, and most of them are part of the Elizabethan sweatshop. Lady Terrell was one of my artisans. Raven was one of my artisans. And a foster apprentice. That sort of thing. But now I have Lady Henriette Saint-Denis. I don't know if you've met her.
familiar with her name. We don't really move necessarily in the same circles.
Right.
But I've seen her at events.
Okay. And Lady Jacqueline and Lord Gregor.
Okay, no, both.
Degrees. And I have, they're about...
Andrea's in their house.
Yeah. We were just talking about her. So they're about 20 of the Wayward Artisans.
Nice.
So, one of them was just made a laurel a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's cool. You mentioned a lot of the Zagnans having met their husbands at the event. Tell me about your experience.
As I said, he jeted over the table, knelt and kissed my hand, and it was over from that moment.
That's it. There's no better opening.
Yeah, a few years later we were married, but it was on again, off again, as I said. But then it worked.
At that point, this honestly is the last question I had was about an award you received that's special to you. And as someone who was trying to become a knight, I can't imagine that there was something more special than getting your laurel, unless you have something in mind that you...
I was at an event. It was actually an arts and crafts legion. And I was sitting next to Dina out in the common era, and we were chatting, and they started court, and we were there, whispering, as just like we still do that, all four of us, like we were still 17. But I looked down suddenly, and there's this giant foot next to me. I look up, and it's Duke Aaron, and he's taking my arm, and Lady Gretchen is taking the other, and I am lifted off my feet and dragged up front, and Jonathan von Trotha, who was king at the time, and Craven, who was crown prince, together offered me the laurel.
Now that's cool.
And then the laurels all told me that it was unanimous. That in fact they had ambushed, is the way they put it, the crown and the crown prince, and said, you need to make this lady a laurel. And that was a very, very memorable day for me. And then about 3 weeks later, at the coronation of Craven and Isminia, I was elevated by Craven and Isminia.
I asked Rick Cook about awards, and he does not realize it, but he nearly brought me to tears because his reply was not about. He said it was less about awards and more about character, and you couldn't fake one of those.
No, you can't. And people who, we've had people in the group who say, well, when I achieve that rank, people will respect me. When I become king, people will respect me. When I'm this, when I'm that. And even when they do, it's ashes in their mouth, because you cannot command respect. It has to be earned. And for most of us, I hope that the awards are not as important. It just took me 34 years to become a laurel. 32, pardon me. I didn't really care, and did people treat me any differently? No, not one little bit.
I want to thank you for taking the time to come and interview with us.
Thank you for doing this. This is a great thing for the kingdom.
I'm happy to do so.
Okay, thanks for your time.